We've actually got 2-for-1 presenters for you today. So we have Theodore from the Goldfields Institute of Technology and Carol Howe from the Kimberley, and they're going to be talking to you a bit about the implementation of two very different VET capability frameworks. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Ty.
So on your table there's the framework, and that's just because on the picture that you're going to see here it doesn't come up real clear, so you guys can have a look. So what is it? It's a professional development framework that we built mainly as a retention tool for staff, and it's values-based. In other words, it's aligned to state-based deliverables. So we looked at Skilling WA, industry training requirements, so industry skills councils, industry training councils, what are they requiring lecturers to have, updates to training packages, and what sort of skills are our lecturers going to have for the future. Looked at AQTF compliance and all of the Institute strategic plans and what we call our competitive advantage, which is part of our strategic plan organisation. Essentially, it's a matrix of competencies written as professional development for each aspect of a lecturer's role and their career phase. So this is what's in front of you at the moment, and what we'll do is I'll go through this all and show you as we talk about it today. So it's essentially broken up into aspects of role, which are the large black circles down the side, different delivery modes that the program's delivered in. It's also got program focus, so there's little asterisks on the right-hand side that talk about whether it's an individual, an organisational, or a industry focus. And then career phases, so whether you're starting out as a lecturer, doing a day-to-day operations, or moving on up from a lecturer to an ASL to a principal lecturer throughout the process. So how does it help? What I'm going to talk to you guys today is not so much about how the process works, but more about how it was built. So how we got to where we are now. The program's been running for about 9 months, and we're probably at a really good point now to do some evaluation. Some of the first starting out modules have run. It's part of our induction process and probably the first 12 months of people's PD. And we're at the point now where we can evaluate it and see what resources and processes need to make it work for the future. So this is more of an idealistic view of how this process is built. So from a lecturer's point of view, the framework provides you with a single point of view for learning opportunities to basically make sure people undertake their jobs in a professional way. It allows them to map through the core skills and knowledge requirements to advance their careers. So it focuses everything from a lecturer's point of view. From a manager's side, you can use the framework to plan and plot skill, knowledge and development over a period of time, and then embed those choices into what we call our valuing performance process, which is effectively your performance appraisal for your lecturers. Okay? So basically what happened one afternoon, it's a little bit of an odd story, and I won't go into the complexities of it, but my wife's a psychologist, and we're having all of these problems of training staff. And she's asking me some really simple questions about how you look after people, what you do for staff, any of that corporate sort of development. And I kept saying, no, we don't do that, no, we don't do that, no, we don't do that. And I got this real sort of look that if you did that to me, I would divorce you. So I sort of thought, well, we have to do something here. So the concept attainment came from researching existing frameworks and those also supporting VET. So those of you who may be familiar with the Australian Institute of Company Directors. We also looked at the Singapore Training and Development Model and the American Society for Training Model. Now they're more about an accreditation and registration body, but the philosophy is still similar. We looked at the TAE, and I'm not going to debate the holes of TAE Cert 4 and what it doesn't do for lecturer training, because we'd probably be here for most of the week. But suffice to say, we identified some gaps in the Cert 4 where it wasn't supporting lecturer as a tool, really. And then we looked at the Skilling WA framework and things like training together, working together, and all of the state and national legislation about what's required in the next sort of 5 to 10 years. In addition to that, we reviewed the Institute's objectives, goals and challenges. So staff attraction and retention issues, which I said was the main instigator for starting this. Our strategic plan and values for the organisation. What we determined is our points of difference in the region. So we're a regional college in Kalgoorlie. We have a predominantly mining and engineering focus and a particular skill set that most of the employers are looking for in our staff. So how should we be training our staff to target that? So this framework is, like I said, it's values-based. So it's designed to meet the values of the industry that we work in. And then we looked at what our competitive advantage was. How are we targeting our values and the competitive advantage of the organisation? From that, we developed a concept, and there was a dozen different ideas: circle, diagram, square, round, you name it. Just names on a napkin after dinner at the pub one night. And at the end of the day, we came up with a concept, and we fed it through all of our team meetings and our governance committees, and came up with a nice little ring of value concept. And essentially what it is we looked at their competitive advantage that we have in the organisation. So the 5 things that as an organisation we feel that we should be doing or do well. Then we looked at the organisational values. What are we supposed to be doing as an organisation, and what are we embedding into the organisation? And then the next part was looking at aspects of role. This is probably the part that took the longest for us to come up with. Everyone has an opinion about what a lecturer should do and what a lecturer shouldn't be doing. So we chatted to the unions, we chatted to staff, principal lecturers, other colleges, employers, you name it, and came up with 5 areas that people felt was important as a training concept. So lecturers effectively train and assess. They prepare and develop resources. They're always involved in the continuous improvement process, although they should be. We should always make time for innovation and flexibility, particularly in our region, having to be dynamic and moving with the times. And there's always a big focus on networking and partnership, whether with industry or with other providers. And then we thought, well, how do we then put this across to lecturing staff? Not all lecturers are at the same level. Some people are new, some people have been going for a couple of years, some people have been going for 30 years. How do we make sure that we're trying to get everything to suit everybody? So we created career phases, and we broke it up into 3 simple areas of starting out, day to day, and moving on up. Starting out is theoretically for a lecturer who's new, either to our college or to the profession, probably in the first 12 months or so. Considering we had a lot of retention issues, starting out is a big area for us. Then day to day is basically what you're doing in your career as a lecturer. It can be for 3 years, 20 years, whatever the process is that suits you. And then moving on up is for those lecturers who are aspiring to be ASLs, principal lecturers, and then move up into the program manager perhaps area. So that was the concept that was put forward. With those things in mind, we developed then a draft program, which ultimately came to what you're seeing in front of you. We sent this draft to industry to gauge the effectiveness of what they thought our lecturers were doing. You know, are our lecturers doing this? Trust me, when they looked at the first couple of columns, they're like, yeah, we don't see your guys. There's no stakeholder engagement. Right, write that down. You know, we're not getting good assessment. The students can't do this, can't do that. When they get to the bottom, okay, reread training packages. So it was that fundamental. We then worked with the PLs and the program managers to create a second draft based on that. Had an all-staff meeting for feedback, which you can do when you've only got about 100 lecturers. And then a final draft was developed and sent to CorpX for funding support and adoption. That process there took about 9 months, just to get to that point. When we took it to corporate executive, there was 3 fundamental questions that came back from that. How are you going to deliver this model? Like, what are you going to do? What's your philosophy behind delivery? People go to PDs, they sit in a room, and what do they get out of it? How are you going to roll it out with an institute? You're going to do PDs every second Friday. You're going to run training days. How are you going to do this? And then ultimately, how are you going to show me that there's value for money? We're going to be spending our professional development funds on this. Why aren't we buying something else? Why aren't we upgrading the admin building or whatever? Okay, why are we spending our money? So after those considerations, we now had a working model, and that took 12 months by the time we got to this point. Okay. So what I'm going to go through with you now is those 3 steps, because that's how the model is built and how it's gotten to where it is now. So the first part was, how are we going to roll this out? Some of you might know a bit about Joyce and Showers and their training model. Essentially, it looks at different modes of input to get different levels of awareness from staff. Our aim was to look at observation and coaching. We wanted to get 90% awareness and a 90% transfer with our staff. An opposite model to that is exactly what we're doing today. We're doing input today, where you'll get 90% awareness of this, you get to take it away, and by the time you get home, you'll have 2 to 3%, you'll actually no idea remember anything that I talked about. So what we're trying to do is not do this. So we're trying to have the embedded process within an organisation. So the Joyce Showers model is about that transfer of knowledge, making people more than just aware, getting past that 2 to 3%, and ensuring that the training program is designed to have input, then coaching and mentoring. So there's a variety of different learning models that we've put in place for this. So like I said, we are now targeting this observation and coaching area. Previously, we were doing modelling and demonstration. We'd have people would come up to Kalgoorlie, they would deliver some PD, we'd take notes, video it, then staff would go away and you put it on the intranet. Jesus, really, 15 minutes. And then they'd forget it all. So this is where we're at now. On the right-hand side, the Applied Learning Unit, which is part of the implementation process. We restructured the organisation to develop a specific Applied Learning Unit. It's made up of about 6 staff, and their role is to manage the PD of the college, as long as support lecturer development. The course is designed in different learning modes. So on the right-hand side there, you'll see on the structure, we have everything from e-learning concepts, face-to-face workshops, mentoring, learning bites. We have a PD day where we've had the Australian Institute of Training Development come up and work on the PD days. So we have different modes of delivery, all focused around mentoring. Nearly every session has either articles, which is up-to-date literature, tools that people can take away with them, and a mentoring process. Once we've got the delivery mode sorted out, how are we going to roll it out? Based on the 5 aspects of role, we have an individual assessment rubric developed for each lecturer. So when they have their meetings with their managers and they do their performance appraisal, we have their essential criteria of their roles, JDF, and we map it to a rubric. And by that, I'm saying, as a new lecturer, they'll probably need to, you're expecting them to understand a portion of it. Someone who's been lecturing for 30 years, you might expect them to have a higher level of understanding. So those of you who know a little bit about Bloom's taxonomy, it's about going from that recall process up to the synthesis and evaluative process, making sure people really understand the function of their role. We added this to the varying performance policy, and so it's part of the professional development plan. And everything that you see on there doesn't mean that staff need to do all of it. They look at their PD activities and their needs with their program managers, and they pick out individual areas that might be their strength, weakness, or areas that might benefit them. And the system is embedded into Blackboard by the ALU staff, and this is how the staff actually access it and get the information out of it. The document that you're seeing in front of you is a live document completely hyperlinked on Blackboard. So people will click on any one of these topics and get the information at hand. As an example, if they click on one of these black spheres, they get the information. What does it mean? So continuous improvement, as an example, is about encouraging lecturers to develop their practices, etc. But then in italics at the bottom, we also put a bit of a feel, as part of our values and our competitive advantage. What is this really supposed to tangibly mean to a lecturer? So theoretically, a lecturer is never satisfied. They are restless and discontent with the average. They're wanting to be better. This is what we're trying to inspire the staff to do. Along the bottom, starting out, the lecturers can click on this again in Blackboard. And look, I do apologise. I had set this up in Captivate, and I clicked it, and I had a voiceover, narration, little video, and it all fell apart. So I need to do the IT one along here and learn how to do that a bit better. So day to day, this explains the 3 processes: where we expect people to be, where we expect them to be in day to day, and then moving on up is about being an advanced skills lecturer and moving through to being a PL and eventually, ideally, a program manager if they like to. On the right-hand side, the delivery modes and the program focuses are all hyperlinked again. The three little stars on the bottom side, they're about an individual, organisation or a industry focus. So as people progress through their career, we're encouraging them to do PD that either has different forms of context, if you like. Once you get to a principal lecturer role, we're encouraging you to say, this is about the organisation and this is about industry. So that's why there's no black stars there. We're wanting people to be working from an organisational point of view and to support our industry colleagues. And again, there's just some definitions of the type of delivery models that we have. Now, this program here is designed for them to be able to enrol and go through most of the information online. Anything that's got a 24/7 on the left-hand side, when they click on the name, and I'll show you an example in a minute, it brings up the full program that they can deliver on Blackboard and they can just complete it straight away. So they just log on, and then when they've completed it, it registers, and our applied learning unit can tick it off against their professional matrix to show that they've completed that activity. So as an example, if you wanted to do, say, behaviour management, you can see there that that's a face-to-face class with articles that we use and tools that are provided for you. So they can click on that, and it'll explain to them what the behaviour management program is about, and that this goes for every one of the areas. And it describes the PD, what's involved in it, the content that you're going to be doing, and it shows them the related tools that they will see when they do the PD. So that's the actual content that they will see throughout the professional development. So as an example, they could click on the two-dimensional theory of bumps, and it pops up with the diagram that they are going to use as part of their PD program. Same as it would for the PowerPoint, the assessment tools, and all the other material that's in there. You'll see that the PD program itself is colour-coded. So the core skills and knowledge is what we think lecturers need to do in each stage. Have to do the organisation induction, have to have their TAE. The yellow squares are our probation and induction area. That happens in the first 12 months of their employment at Goldfields Institute, regardless of how experienced they may have been. They then move into the green area, the blue, then purple. So it's ideally showing them from a transition from yellow through to purple, which is beginning to end, for lack of a better word. They can do it in any order they like. They don't have to do every course, but that's how this is structured. That's the process, mapped to our competitive advantage. The programs are basically delivered every second Friday, or in planned PD sessions or training days. Okay? So the evaluation process, as I mentioned, we're 9 months in, and we're going through this now. So we have recorded ASL and principal lecturer mentoring sessions. So all of the ASLs and PLs are heavily involved with the staff. They have the program manager varying performance appraisals. So twice a year they meet with their staff and go through their performance reviews. Student employer satisfaction surveys. We expect to see a change in those based on this professional development. All data is then collated and presented to the Training Governance Committee for monitoring, and then there's a biannual review that happens with corporate executive to ensure that the funding we're meeting all the KPIs from that point of view. So in summary, it's a framework that was built by lecturers for lecturers, and that's the biggest point here. It's an individual product for a college. It took us about 12 months to build. And the philosophy is that it's tailored for us. It's not a generic program that we've bought in and put something into it, we've built it. It combines strategic thinking and intelligent design to represent a lecturer's role at Goldfields. And we like the idea that it has an interaction between career phase and aspect of role, and that the 3 career phases are a starting point about strengthening people's capabilities. And as you can see, the 5 aspects of role represent what we think is a sensible arrangement. We know that lecturers' roles are complex, and this is just a nice way of pigeonholing most of those activities. It indicates a range of training programs with a variety of different modes, with individual rubrics, allowing people to develop at their own pace in their own industry area. Thank
you. My name's Carol Howe. I'm from Kimberley Training Institute. What I'd like you to do to start with is just take a moment to think to yourself, what is it a VEC practitioner does in your environment? Turn to the person next to you and introduce yourselves to them and just give a couple of key points about what it is that you see this person does in your organisation. If you're sitting by yourself, do you want to just join up there? That'd be great. Okay, thanks for that. I'm well aware there's probably a huge lot of discussion that would go on with this. Just to let you know, we've done a very different process at Kimberley Training Institute, and on your table there is an unmarked envelope. So if you want to just unpack that, and look, if you've got a biggish group of people at your table, there are tables that have the envelopes on them, and if you want to bring it across so that there's one envelope between sort of 2 or 3 people rather than 4 or 5 people. And we have totally taken on the IBSA capability framework. So my hope is that people have got a little bit of an idea of what that means, and hopefully came to the previous little workshop. So just share a few things around with you, and I'll go through and talk a little bit about how we implemented, or how we are implementing. Sorry, we're way at the very beginning, Ty, unlike yourself who you know, a bit further along in that process. And I think what I'll do is I'll start from the beginning. HR, you know, there's always been this great talk about workforce development this, workforce development that, and it sort of dissipates in, well, what does that really mean? So HR have come to the 2 principal lecturers and have gone, you know, we're looking at this workforce development process and we think this framework might be really good. And I'm going, oh, here we go, another meeting, blah, blah, blah. As usual, people trying to impose things on you. Sorry, Marcus, my boss is here. And when they started explaining this framework to me, I've just gone, wow, that really does it. Because as you might have done in your little discussion there, and with your lecturing staff, if they're the people you work with, or if you're one of those people, you start listing the things that you do, and it just goes on forever. It's absolutely everything. From, you know, for many of the people in our organisation, you wander around and you pick up the students, you get them breakfast, you bring them to TAFE training, you do lunch with them, you do all sorts of other caring stuff with them, as well as the training, the assessment, and then, you know, hopefully, well, we've all probably just gone through audit processes, and so that's all that compliance issues, and it does just go on. And I think this as a framework, and I don't mean this in a negative way, really pigeonholed a whole lot of that and went, yeah, that's what we do. Pigeonholed without limiting it. And I think that was one of the key things. So, all right, so I've gone, wow, this is fantastic. How are we going to do this? In our organisation, we have a group of senior lecturers called the Academic Leader and Advisory Group, and they're mostly, well, we now have 3 principal lecturers, which is a luxury from going from 1.5 in the last few years, ASL 2s, ASL 1s, and other lecturing staff who are committed to being either senior lecturers, or some areas didn't have ASLs, some of the trades areas, some of our smaller campuses, because as you might be aware, we've got smaller campuses in Derby, Kununurra, Halls Creek, and they don't always have senior people, but people who have lots of experience. So they've committed to coming onto our group. At the beginning of this year, we had a 2-day workshop. And to be honest, I wasn't sure where we were going to go with this, but we were certainly going to start with something like this capability framework. And as some of the senior lecturers saw this, they just grabbed it and went, this is fantastic. What do you think that they may have thought could have been really useful about a framework like this? just have a quick word to the person next to you. What do you think could have been a positive thing about a framework like this? Okay, so I'm aware that time will get away from us today. So do I have any tables or any person in particular who'd like to just flick their hand up and give a comment to everybody? Yep. Job description? Yep. Perfect. Gap analysis, where you need to be, where you are, where you need to be. Absolutely. Somebody was saying something down here. Did you want to? Yep. Some definition of where that practitioner would be. Yep. Absolutely, fantastic. So yes, you're quite right, and that's what I was sort of saying at the beginning, you know, that you've got this job that is just never ending, and it just gives that visualness that helps to structure it. So let me just look at my notes to make sure I'm on the right track. Isn't technology wonderful? My PowerPoint didn't arrive, but I've got it on my smartphone. All right, so I guess the idea with that was to try and get to start in the middle, because many things get imposed from the top. And being a practitioner, it's let me take control, let us take control of what's going on here. So that idea of structuring where we are, where we're going, what we're doing, and not just have your manager take this framework and go, well, where are you today and what should you be doing? It's this is me, this is where I'm at, and trying to have that kind of ownership of, okay, let me do some self-assessment. Let me work out, well, what is my job? What am I supposed to be doing? And the mention of new staff over here. We have a number of very, very new staff at the moment, and they're just swamped. Where do I start? What do I do? You know, they're great at their industry. They have been doing some training and assessment, but it's been in a workplace environment. So, okay, so here's some training stuff. Here's some assessment stuff. Here's our compliance. Oh, yes, there are lots of those forms and systems that we're working in. And there's the industry areas. So as an academic leader group at the ASLs, what we tried to do was to do our own self-assessment. So each person took some time, and it was interesting because we found that by doing your own self-assessment, you actually got a really good understanding of what the framework was going to be about. And then doing some discussion, and we ended up having on all across our whiteboard, because people were very, very generous with and very honest about how they did their self-assessment. So we did a bit of an analysis of our senior lecturing team and went, where are our strengths as a senior team and where are some of those gaps? And I thought that was really interesting. And I put myself on the line to start with because I teach the Certificate for Training and Assessment. And in that, you do that ultimate question, well, who's my industry? We get to be our own industry to some extent. It's easy for hospitality people because there's 5-star resorts here and there and other places, so they can go out to consult with that industry. So in this as a process, you know, we were looking at the different levels. What level are we up to? And I'd look at myself and go, you know, I'm a principal lecturer, really? Should be the 3s there. And if I'm not a 3, why not? And I wasn't a 3 in some of that industry networking and contacting because I just let that go by the by. And I think it's really important that that self-analysis is there, and then you can then discuss with your managers how you might go on with that. And the ALAG team, or the academic leaders team, actually owned it, took it on and went, yes, this is such a positive approach to working on our staff so that they can then take some control about their PD and we're trying to obviously move the mentoring process in place. So what I'll do is just direct you then to a couple of other documents here, the one with lots of block colours. And for those of you who are trained assessors, you'll recognise the process of mapping. So what I've done is I've looked at, and just be aware that this is an excerpt from our mentoring list of things that a new staff member would be going through. I didn't want to do the pages and pages. And so what I've done is we've mapped it, and I've put it in colour in this particular process of where those things that our academic leaders felt were the key things in a brand new staff member's entry into our organisation, where does it fit in the capability framework? And what's the colour that you see mostly? Red. Funny about that. All those compliance issues or the organisation's structures, those kinds of things, because they're probably the hardest part that people need to come into. So we did a bit of mapping there. You know, you can have this great list of, you know, what should we mentor our staff on, but it does actually fit into the capability framework. The other document I'll just point out to you, again, with lots of colours, and I must give some acknowledgement to Tracy Deegan, who is our workforce development person in the HR department, who helps us with a lot of our professional development. She started this list of what lecturers, you know, can, should, have done in the past in terms of professional development. The academic leaders expanded it further, and they're hopefully taking some responsibility for that process as well. So it's not, you know, an ad hoc process. You go to your manager, oh, PD, oh, what do I want to do next year? Oh, you can actually do some planning. You can see what's recommended, who might be doing it, how often it might happen, who's taking charge of it, and when you could take the opportunity to be part of it. And does it fit in with your, and we call it a My Plan for Success, our staff evaluation. So then with that, oh, I've still got a couple more bits of paper in here. Oh, look at that. Amazing. No, that's not the one I want. So this little tiny page here, and this is all this implementation. It's not quite like Ty has done there. We've just taken the capability framework and we're making it fit our organisation and where we are at this point in time. You know, there might be things that we might change as we go through. This is a one page out of the staff evaluation that goes between manager and staff member, and this is the bit to do with the capability framework. This has already been embedded. Our HR staff just went, oh, let's just put that in and see how it goes. And what we're looking to do is to make it more effective. And so I've done the colouring there. The idea is, what would fit? What do you think you need? And let's look back at the capability framework. And I think, as was said in the IPSA presentation, that what I think this does is actually has benchmarks, has set things. So if you're struggling with your learning design, then it's really specific. And I think what it also does is get rid of that halo effect when staff are talking to their manager. Oh, you're a good bloke. Oh, you'll be fine. Yeah, great. What PD did you want to do? Oh, yeah, sure. You know, you can do whatever you like. You contribute to the organisation. And it's very, very general. So this helps to go much more specific. So you can be really targeted with the professional development that will develop you. As an academic leader group, we had great discussion about the levels. You know, what is level 1 practitioner? What is level 3 practitioner? You know, no, it's not as clear cut as ASL 3 or principal lecturer, sorry, ASL 3, principal lecturer, ASL 2, ASL 1. We came to the view, and I'm glad that was confirmed with the IPSA presentation, that practitioner level 1 is someone who is a competent practitioner. That's our take on that. And we have lots of people who aren't at that level yet. They've only just come into their organisation, our organisation. They're highly skilled in their industry, but they've not done a lot of training, assessment, or compliance in our area. And so this helps us work out what is it that they need to be doing, and to stop that process of chucking them in the deep end, you know, the sink or swim, and trying to get a really staged process. And I know something like the Certificate for Training and Assessment, you know, you have 2 years to complete it. I'm sorry, by the time someone gets to 2 years, if they haven't completed it, they have struggled and struggled and struggled all the way along to actually do the jobs that's required in our organisation anyway. So, do I have any questions? I know that's a lot. Yes, sorry, go on. Of this? Okay, we probably haven't quite got to that stage yet. Oh, the new group, look, and we're very fragmented at the moment, and their manager tends to direct them to more of a senior person in their team. We do have a structure that was more for compliance initially, but it's been moved across. Every ASL 2 is a leader of a team of ASL and or other staff who then lead the rest of the team. So because we're so diverse across the Kimberley, we have that allocated. You know, it's not hard and fast, and somebody else can easily step in. So yes, we do have that as a partial structure. So that's at our lecturer level. So the framework sits there. We are looking to ensure that people get mentored into the system, that they have the professional development that leads them to their staff evaluation. IBSA, I think, correct me ladies if I'm wrong, I think their process says, you know, start from recruitment. We decided not to start from recruitment. We felt that we needed to get, can you just do that again? Get a whole lot of things embedded first. And we've just started, let me go back one more step. So we did all sorts of training and working out and teasing out with the academic leaders group. So they're the middle group in our organisation. I've since done a training day with the managers. So we've got portfolio managers and we've got regional campus managers. So, and planning organisation managers, director of training, and corporate services management. So I've done a training day with those people. It's always unusual because usually it's being trained down the line. What we're trying to do from the academic leaders group is train up the line and then out to our lecturing staff. So with that, we looked at, and this is one of your little pictures there as well, as I have on the PowerPoint. So we're looking at the framework being in the centre, and then around it, that idea of, so we've got a job description, and the job descriptions are being redesigned, and the interview process is being redesigned. And the reason for that, we figure, and this is such an opportunity, that instead of just advertising for a lecturer who you expect to have all those capabilities, because what are you employing there? A principal lecturer at, you know, level 1. What we're trying to do is go, what job is this person actually going to be doing on the ground? So the idea is, all right, we want to scope for a whole new industry area. You can't employ necessarily someone who is a full-on trainer, assessor, has all the compliance and has the industry networking. What we want is someone who's got all the industry contacts, because they're going to have to be going out to our local industry, we're dealing with national industry, and bringing that information into the scoping process. We need them to also be well aware of the compliance issues, what forms, what documents, what processes, with the help of people who might be trained trainers and assessors. So we can actually determine that job role a little bit more effectively than we may have done before. All right, you'll still want them to roll that out eventually, but to get something on scope, you need that other level of expertise. So you might go the other way. And so, you know, this is why I think as a framework, it really allows you to determine what it is that you want in this particular trainer and assessor. Because it is such a very, very big area. All right. So that's the job description, job role, the interview process. It is definitely going to be changing. Looking at having that induction process. Now, the induction isn't listed there. We have a really good generic induction, couple of days, that does all the things of how to apply for leave and how to do all those other things, but we don't really have a solid lecturer-focused induction, which we're working on. You know, they've come and they've gone, and we're trying now to get something set out. And so the academic leader team worked on that. I know most of you have got all of these things. If you're in big organisations, those things just seem to roll out. You know, when you've got a small organisation, you're relying on the goodwill of people who are already very busy training and assessing to actually contribute. So that induction process is happening. Then we're looking at that professional development, that just-in-time structured professional development, which could be mentoring. So in that mentoring process that we've listed there, it doesn't mean the mentor does it all. You know, a portion of it where it might talk about, evidence gathering, the assessment part. They will say, if you haven't got your Cert 4, then you need to be talking to your Cert 4 person and starting to get a much better handle on what that is about. But they're the people that will guide them to that person who has that knowledge. They will be the person to guide them to where they can access it. And some of our administrative processes, the same kind of thing. You'll notice on that form also we've given a bit of a time frame in terms of how long do you think it might take to get that process started. Obviously a lot of these things take practice, and you'll continue with that. The other things we've put around the framework, that my plan for success, so taking control. Who am I? What can I do? What do I need to do? Do I want to go to be an ASL? What are the opportunities? What professional development? Where's that pathway? And that's a key thing, because we have a number of staff who go, I want to be an ASL, how do I get there? I've got all the qualifications, why can't I just have an interview and you can tell me I can do that job? We're trying to structure it so that people have the opportunity to display that leadership. And the thing I find really interesting about the capability framework are the words. Now, for those of you who are experts in their training package, you will notice the different levels actually have those different words. You know, the level 1 practitioner talks about uses documents, or works with, or I can't think of some of the words that are there, but demonstrates. Contributes to, yes, thank you very much, yes. And so we're well aware of those being, you know, Certificate 1, Certificate 2 level comments in performance criteria. And then you move to the level 3 practitioner and it says leads teams, reviews, analyses. And so it's very easy then to actually have some kind of criteria to benchmark against. Do they actually lead a team? Is it across the whole organisation, or are they leading their colleague? There are only 2 of them in their delivery team. So it gives them the opportunity to go, no, maybe I need to be leading a little bit further, a little bit wider, looking at the other kinds of processes that I can be doing. On your page there is, I haven't got one in here, is there something that says lecturer induction? There's a page, there we go, yep. So there's probably a couple of these. How are we going for time? 5? Okay, just as a quick little exercise, what I've got here is lecturer induction. So in 2s or 3s, see if you can map, don't you love that? Those people who are trainers and assessors. What's in the lecturer induction to, let's just go to the domains of the capability framework. Just the broad picture. Are they teaching? Are they assessing? Are they compliance? Or are they industry networking or community areas? Just in 2s or 3s in your group. Okay, I'm well aware that time is slipping away. Was there anything that jumped out that you didn't think fitted into the framework? No? Because realistically, that list, you know, it says lecturer induction. It was, I think the headings are, you know, pre-training, during training, after training type focus. So what do you need to know, be able to do, and, you know, all the other compliance stuff before you actually start? What is it that you need to know, be able to do, and what are the forms you have to fill out when you're actually in the training environment? And what is it that you need to be able to know, do after that training actually occurs? And this is not a new process. We've sort of had this for a while, but it's good to put it in those kinds of boxes, because I think that then links back to the framework. So one of our key things, or a couple of our key things, ownership. Ownership by our lecturing staff. It's not imposed, it's something that we see as what we can hang our jobs on. And taking that control and going, this is where I'm up to, this is where I want to be going. To have that career focus of what is it that I need to keep me current, because there are all those kinds of things happening now. What means currency for you? How can you keep currency happening? What is your industry? You know, we're mostly, you know, triple qualified. We need triple lots of industry currency. We need to keep all that networking up, and we need to make sure that we're keeping compliant documents, compliant processes as well. So this is how we're doing it. We've just taken the framework. We haven't done all that development that Ty has got, and in answering a question there of, you know, where is it? Is it linked? We're still working on that process of getting this into, and we use Blackboard, into a Blackboard base so that it can be totally accessible by all our staff in terms of professional development, mentoring, and all those processes. We do tend to focus on a face-to-face. Lots of our brand new staff like that face-to-face. They want someone they can see, they can talk to, they can go, oh, can you give me a hand? And they much prefer that, but obviously we're moving into a technology support process with that. So are there any questions for myself or for Ty? Okay, we're still working through that process, and it will be very much a voluntary process at this point in time. Part of our learning process when those 2 days were there is, you know, what's a good mentor? Who's a good mentoree? You know, because not everyone wants a mentor. And just trying to, you know, it's part of that responsibility of principal lecturers, ASLs, and senior people within their teams. So we haven't totally got that organised yet. Absolutely. Yep. It's very much on that skill level. It's not just because you're an ASL. But, you know, you might go, look, I'm happy to mentor everybody in this aspect, you know, and divvy that down. We could certainly be looking at those kinds of things. Yep, buddy, we've got that buddy process. And, you know, I liked Andrew Forrest's statement that everyone's a mentor this morning, that, you know, I just go, yep, you know, because you're sitting next to someone and they go, how do you do this? And you take a second to show them how to get into some system or something or other, and that's more buddying, I suppose, but there's still part of that mentor process to bring people into your workplace. Yep, absolutely. We haven't totally got that under control. And the other thing, actually, with mentoring, this is an interesting thing that came out of our academic leader team, was that we often think, oh, you know, mentoring, bringing new staff on. Sorry, Ty. Most of us went, you know, we need mentors too, you know, because you get to be the person who is helping everyone else, and you go, you know, I need something new. I need a different idea. I need to have somebody, and my preference is I like to have someone who motivates me to achieve. You know, I went and saw Edward de Bono give a presentation in the last couple of years, and it was just so inspiring. But the inspiring part was sitting at a table, and this person sitting next to me went, we use Edward de Bono's process in every meeting we have in our organisation. And I went, wow, how do you do that? And so that I took back, and I ran a meeting according to Edward de Bono's 6 hats of thinking, and I went, you know, and that kind of stuff, and that's what I need as a principal lecturer, and that's what our academic leaders were saying, we need that. So this is our next step that we'll be probably putting into this, that the mentoring process is not just for new beginning people, that we should all be able to have access to, you know, someone who will inspire, help you with further processes. And I think, you know, Ty saying end now, you know, Ty said, oh, well, I'll learn a bit more about the IT stuff. And so that's part of that process. So thank you all very much.